This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to the Balanced Growth Show. I am your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we have the privilege of welcoming Alan Moore to the show. Alan is a CFP and co-founder of the XY Planning Network, a support network for advisors looking to serve next-generation clients. He is also the CEO of AdvicePay, the first and only compliant payment processor for financial advisors. He's passionate about helping financial planners start and grow their own fee-only firms to serve Gen X and Gen Y clients, largely ignored by traditional firms. And I'll add, he's a pretty cool guy. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man. I know we have talked before, and it's so nice to have you back here to the Balanced Growth Show. We're going to be talking about balance. We're going to be talking about growing your firm, all of which I know just straight up transparent, if I was an advisor today, I would be an XY planning advisor because it embodies the ideas of balance. It embodies the way of growing that I 100% agree with. So I love having you on the show. Thank you for your time. Let's talk quickly about how did you get here? How did you get to the point where you're at? Quick intro story. How did you get into this industry and being able to make this run for XY Planning?
Yeah, it started in college. I thought I was going to be a pharmacist, go get my, I would have been Dr. Moore at some point. Quickly learned that life sciences was not for me and fell into the financial planning program at the University of Georgia. I took a intro to financial planning course. I thought I was learning how to budget for myself. It was actually the intro to the CFP program, which was the hardest class I had taken, but just absolutely fell in love with it. And so I got my undergrad and then master's degrees in family financial planning there at UGA. Went on to work at a couple of fee-only RIAs as an associate advisor. Before I think, back in 2012, I officially got fired for the last time. So far, haven't been fired since. And just made the decision. I was sort of faced with this conundrum. Do I go get another job as an associate advisor in an RIA or what if I started my own firm? And it just seemed like I had an opportunity. I was young and ignorant and arrogant. I was 25 at the time, had no business starting my own firm, but I just decided, hey, I'll take a swing and see what happens. And so started my own firm, and I was very fortunate, had a lot of support from other advisors and was able to find some success. And so I sort of was following this sort of traditional career path, I guess, if you will. And then the curveball came when I met Michael Kitces, my co-founder, who's been on this show before. I think most folks know him. But he and I started talking about, hey, there's a lot of advisors asking us questions about starting your own firm. And they're asking questions about how do you manage compliance and how do you do bookkeeping and how do you select technology? And so we said, hey, why don't we start this little side project? We'll help a few advisors. He had his thing going on. I had my own firm. And so we said, let's start this XY Planning Network. It'll be a little side project. It'll be fun. And we just really hit the market at the right time with the right offering. There was a lot of demand from advisors who were interested in becoming solopreneurs, becoming entrepreneurs, or we're just really fed up with the status quo and we're looking for a community. And so we started XYPN back in 2014, 8.5, almost 9 years later now. We've got almost 1,700 advisory firms. We represent about 15% of all the state registered RIAs doing financial planning now, which it's been a really fun ride over these last 8 years.
So great. And, I'm with you. The growing pains are real. And a lot of advisors, they feel you. They know what it's like to get out there and try to be, in independent space or want to. And I have a lot of advisors on this show who, we talk about the issue of balance. Like, how do we do this? How do we start a business? How do we run it? How do we grow it while keeping this balance? And this is exactly why I love having you on the show, Alan. I know you're a family man. Balance is important to you. I know you love skiing. I know you love your family. Those things, are if not more important than the work that you do. But let's talk about this balance. What is balance to you? What does it look like? If you had to give an analogy or say, Travis, this is what I look at balance. This is what I see it as. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I know the language we use has sort of shifted over time. I know a lot of folks like to say, that work-life harmony and that sort of thing. I like to think of it as being intentional with where I spend my time and energy. And there are weeks where I choose to spend more of my time and energy at work. There's times where I spend more of my time and energy at home. I spend more of my time and energy on the ski slopes, depending on the time of year and how much powder there is. But I think so many of us, and I'm so guilty of this day in and day out, and have been for years. I'm trying to get better. Of just sort of going through life, letting other people dictate where my time and energy are going, and then I get to the end of the day, the week, the month, and I look back and I realize I didn't spend it where I wanted to, where it was going to fulfill me, was going to be for the things that spend on the things that ultimately I wanted to do. And so for me, balance is really about intentionality. I don't think, if someone says, well, I work 100 hours a week, I'm not going to say you're out of balance. I'm just going to ask, is that intentional? Are you spending your time on the right things, on the things that ultimately bring you joy, that are going to help you meet your short-term, midterm, long-term goals? And if so, great. If not, let's figure out how to correct it.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about intentionality. It's about where you want to put, and I call it the make time method, where you make time. What you make time for, you're going to do. And, as we talk about balance, I'm trying to make balance sexy again. It's had such a bad rap. And yeah, it's harmony, it's integration, it's all these other terms that I've heard literally hundreds of times. We've interviewed over 650 advisors at this point and business owners. But so I love your style. I love where you're going with that. It's where your intention is. A lot of advisors struggle to build and grow a business because two things. One, I found that they are afraid to grow because they don't want to lose the sense of balance they already have. And that might be, I like my 45 hours a week. I don't really want to grow a team because it means I'm going to spend more time, energy, hassle, stress. So maybe they go solo and have some virtual, assistants. But the ones that do grow, they realize pretty quickly that, this was not the kind of business I wanted to create, right? And I know you guys have different levels of what kind of financial planning practices are out there, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And they realize, this wasn't it, or they're really just not into the whole idea of, if I get into the marketing side of things, will that take me away from being an advisor, right? And they struggle with the management of other advisors, being the CEO versus being an advisor, and they almost can't let go to the point where now they are running two businesses and they can't seem to create that balance. Now, I help them a lot with these things, obviously with my own practice, but curious, what is your take on the growth part? What is it that you have seen with advisors that are struggling or doing it well? And maybe let's look at those two aspects. What are they struggling with? What are they doing well? If you want to break that down for us.
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of the big mistakes I see advisors make is they build the wrong business. And I have made this mistake myself. I thought I wanted to be a solopreneur forever. And as of today, between the two companies, I think we have about 130, 140 team members that I'm accountable for now. I had no idea, and it wasn't intentional. And I've had a lot of missteps and stress because of that. But and that's what I try to impart onto advisors, is that you got to be really intentional about building the right business for you for the life stage that you're in. And the decisions that you make today, they don't have to be your forever. Because you choose to stay solo doesn't mean you need to be solo for the rest of your life. It may be because you have young kids that still want to hang out with you. And so you actually want to spend time with them. And when they're out of the house, you can ramp up and go hire a bunch of team members and build a big business if that's what you want to do. And so to your earlier point, we like to group advisory firms sort of into three groups and three types of businesses that you may want to build. One is the solo practice. And these are folks who say, I never want to build a big business. I don't want to manage people. I don't want to have to hire them. I don't want to be responsible for others. I just want to build a job for myself. And in financial planning, in particular, you can make a lot of money, have a lot of flexibility, help a lot of people, and really be able to build that practice that supports your own life. And that's awesome. Now, you're not going to build a lot of enterprise value. You're not going to go sell your firm for hundreds of millions of dollars, but you can build a really great job for yourself by doing that. On the flip side, we have the enterprises, and these are the folks who say, to your point earlier, I don't want to be a financial planner. I want to be a CEO. I want to run a business, and I want to build a business. And they go out and they build enterprise value. They hire a bunch of advisors. They really scale the practice. And kind of the numbers we like to use, probably 20 employees or more. Once you're hitting that 20 employee mark, like you're clearly indicating like you want to build an enterprise business. And then in between, I like to call those the boutiques. These are the folks who say, I do want to grow. I do want to hire advisors. Many times these are really mission-driven advisors who have a really clearly defined niche, and they just can't help themselves but to bring other people into the fold to help them better serve that niche, better accomplish that mission. And they end up being sort of part advisor, part CEO. And that's probably one of the best indicators of sort of what are you building towards? Like, do you want to spend all your time doing financial planning? Do you want to spend all your time running a business? Or do you want to sort of split your time between those two activities? And again, the mistake that we see is that advisors who really want to build a solo practice, they start hiring, they keep hiring, they just realize like they're not doing the work that they really enjoy. And I think that goes back to a separate point, which is one of the misnomers about business is that it's a science with an algorithm, that somewhere in a spreadsheet, there's an algorithm that will dictate business success. And I wish it was that easy. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. Business is not a science, it's an art. And the beauty and the curse of entrepreneurship is that you get to paint the picture whatever color you want to paint it. And you can make it look like whatever you want it to look like. And you're going to make mistakes. But nice thing is you can keep painting over it. But you start with a blank canvas. And in many ways, it's so overwhelming because the options are endless. But you do have the freedom and the beauty of being an entrepreneur. The reason we become entrepreneurs is to have the freedom to paint that canvas, whatever you want to paint it. And also to ignore everyone who tells you they don't think your canvas is pretty. It doesn't matter what they think. It matters what you think. You're not trying to sell the canvas right now. So that all sort of ties together into this being really intentional about the business you're trying to build, and then making decisions along the way that support that decision.
I love that you talked about this being an art form, because we have great intentions as entrepreneurs, don't we? Like, hey, this is my goals, my business plans, what I want it to be. And we try to reverse engineer, and especially planners, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a planner at heart. I was an advisor for 10 years. As a planner, we try to plan all the details, get everything and reverse engineer so it'll look like that. And reality is exactly what you mentioned. Like, you didn't realize you'd have 140 employees when you first got started with this thing. And look at where you're at now. I love it, what you guys are doing, but I also love the flexibility and, again, the intentionality that you put behind this. What do you think as advisors, regardless if they're solo or they have an enterprise business, wherever they're at, what are some of the things that advisors are doing well when they scale as they're growing, as you've seen them, or even things that you suggest that they do to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the myths of growth is people think like, oh, if I'm a CEO with a bunch of employees, I'm going to work more hours, I'm going to work harder. And I can tell you, I've never had as much work-life balance, work-life harmony, whatever you want to call it, than I have now. The bigger we've gotten, the more flexibility I have gotten, because it's not all resting on my shoulders. I've been able to hire a team of experienced executives who are way better at running the company than I am, and have really relieved the pressure valve, if you will, of being the entrepreneur, or being the founder CEO. But advisors by nature tend to be planners, and therefore they are, I would say, better than probably the entrepreneurial community at large at actually making good business plans and then sort of sticking with what those goals are, being really clear and articulate about what they want those goals to be, what they want the business to look like. And I see this with a lot of other businesses, a lot of other entrepreneurs that they're not necessarily wired that way. And so just innate, those of us who got into financial planning, we probably like to make plans. And that does help. That's a huge component of being really intentional with where you're going to go. I'll butcher the Babe Ruth quote of, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else or something like that. But it's really true that if you're not intentional about where you want to go, you will end up somewhere else that you probably don't want to be. And so I do see advisors being able to embrace that. We're also a community that does support the solopreneur. So many, industries out there, it's grow or die. In tech, there's no such thing as solopreneuring a technology company. Like you grow, you have to be first to market, grow super fast, take all the risk and hope for the best. And that's just a different industry than we're in. And because we're in professional services, we have the ability, again, to really build out a flexible, high-paying job for ourselves, which is amazing. It's really a gift, and but again, we also get to help people, which I really view this as a helping profession, and it's why many of us got into this business in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. And because of that helper innate kind of ability or desire, I think that actually is why advisors, and at least why they've told me, is why they struggle with balance so much, is they want to be like the first to answer the phone, or the first to get back on the email, or I got to answer my clients on the weekends, because if not, they're going to think I'm not helping them. Like, they just don't set up those boundaries and realize, even this isn't like beginning advisors. These are veteran advisors telling me this still, and they almost put it as a badge of honor that, look what I've done. I don't have balance. Yeah, yep. Exactly. So I absolutely agree. And I call it the workaholic trap, where I feel like some of them get stuck down in this trap because they want to help, they want to grow, but they realize they either have to be a great advisor with boundaries, or they need to be the business owner, like what you described, which is interesting about your own balance, that you have better balance by being the business owner. I think that's wonderful. And that needs to be told. And I 100% agree. Now, we both know planners are great planners, and that helps them to grow these business plans. But why do they struggle with growing, marketing, scaling? Why do they really struggle with this part while trying to keep their balance? What do you think it is? And maybe even what might be some of your own struggles there too?
I mean, candidly, I think it's because they don't enjoy that work. They didn't go get a degree in marketing. They didn't get a degree in running a business. They got a degree in or got an education in financial planning. They wanted to do financial planning. And I think that's where, we are in a business where you can be a technician. You can want to do spend as much time as possible being a financial planner and still be a business owner. But at what point you start hiring, you're no longer a financial planner. You're now a manager who does some financial planning. You're now a business owner, and you really have to make a decision and really know yourself and be willing to admit to yourself, what do you enjoy doing? I love trying to explain to my 8-year-old and 4-year-old what I do for a living. And if you ask them, what does dad do? They'll say, dad does meetings. And it's true. Like, the majority of my time is spent in meetings, reviewing data reports, talking strategy, going through PowerPoint slides. Like, I love it. I'm making it sound kind of boring, but like, I love what I do. But you really have to know yourself and figure it out. Now, again, candidly, 9 years ago when we were starting this business, I wouldn't have told you I enjoyed this part. I didn't realize it. But I think advisors struggle because they just don't enjoy that work, and it's like they're growing because they think they're supposed to grow. Like, tell advisors, don't should on yourself. Don't I should do this, I should do that. Alan told me I should work this way. Dr. Perry told me I should do it. Like, no, just take a step back. And you got to make these decisions for yourself and get really clear of, are you growing just for the sake of growth because someone told you had to grow? Or are you growing because it helps you further your mission? It allows you to spend more of your time doing the things you love doing. It allows you to, spend more time with family, more time with certain clients, whatever the thing is. And getting really intentional about that. But I will say that the vast majority of business owners, particularly in our space, they are not wired to be enterprise business builders. It is very rare. It is not super common. And I would say 90% of the people who think they want to be an enterprise business builder get about halfway into it and realize that's not actually what they wanted, and that their motivations were really different than ultimately what's going to support that type of business. I think it's also important to recognize, because I don't think this gets talked about enough, is that many of us became entrepreneurs, whether we acknowledged it or recognized it at the time or not, but because of neurodivergence. And so I am ADHD. I talk about that a lot on our podcast. And many of us kind of got forced into entrepreneurship because the traditional 9-to-5 W-2 world was not built for the neurodivergent. And so the challenge that comes with that, however, is that addiction rates, suicide rates, bankruptcy rates, all of these things are significantly higher in the neurodivergent population than the non-neurodivergent population. And so because of that, I do think that as an entrepreneur, you have to recognize that you are at a greater risk of some of these things. And you really, I think you have to put forth even more effort than other folks that you may be comparing yourself to, because you may notice that you get just solely focused on one thing. That's me, being ADHD. Like, I can get so hyper focused on one thing, and it's all I think about for weeks or months. It's all I talk about, at the cost of all the other things I'm supposed to be doing or that I've committed to doing. And so I think that's also something that, again, we don't talk enough about, is recognizing just the risks associated with becoming an entrepreneur, what many times what correlates with us, or I guess causation that leads us to become entrepreneurs, and what we really have to look out for there.
Man, you opened the floodgates on this one. I had so many thoughts that go back to, but I'm gonna have you go a little bit deeper on this ADHD stuff, because I will tell you, when I went independent from good old Northwestern Mutual, started off as an advisor, thought I was becoming a planner, only to find out I'm an employee of a giant big company. Well, Travis, you should have figured that out. Yeah, well, maybe I'm a little slow sometimes. But as I was getting out there, man, I thought that I was missing out on balance, because I was at this big company who wanted me to work nights and weekends, only to find out when I started my own company, Alan, now I was much higher rate of losing balance, or, risk of losing my balance, because I had nobody looking over my shoulder, tell me what to do, or I completely lost that managerial focus that I had, that I took for granted, quite honestly. Now I know that, XY planning, or a firm that has both the independent feel plus some team approach, very, very popular these days with advisors. And I really like that. So getting back to this, the only thing that kept me going was a system, and I'm showing my book right now, but Achieving Balance is really all about that system that I created. And I got coached by a guy who was coached by, was a coach of the E-Myth author, Michael Gerber. And so I consider myself Michael Gerber's grandson. Thank you very much. And I learned that whole system, dude. As an entrepreneur, like, we all have ADD. Like, it's a real thing. It isn't a legitimate thing, whether or not you're diagnosed. Like, it's constant losing focus. I have to turn everything else off when I'm talking to you. I have my OneNote up, and I have, the camera right in front of me to keep me focused. Otherwise, I'm going to do other stuff. Right. And this is the guy who's supposed to be Mr. Balance, out there helping other people. So I totally understand that. So talk to us deeper about, what is it that you do? What are some things that help you to keep this focus, keep this intentionality that you're talking about? What are some application that others who are struggling can learn from?
Yeah, it's a lifelong journey that is never done. But you mentioned that about the lack of managerial oversight, and I like to call those artificial structures. That many times when you have a job or you're in school or whatnot, you have these sort of artificial structures, which I think help some of us, those of us with ADHD, to really be able to fit into that system if it's a system that works for us. And then when you go out on your own, you're left to your own devices, and you have unlimited options, because there is always more to do. You're never done. I mean, there's always going to be something else that you could be working on, you could be doing. And so for me, it really has been around creating a lot of time blocking systems for myself, and creating some really foundational habits that keep me on track. So for instance, I have never been an early riser. For the last couple of years, really in the middle of COVID, I hit a low point well, maybe I should say high point weight wise, low point, probably depression wise, and just said, you know what, I'm going to get healthy again. And so, I'm up at between 5 and 5:30 every morning. And look, I'm not here to tell you that people who wake up early are cooler than anybody else. I hate that stuff. But I have 3 young kids. And so if I don't work out in the morning, I don't work out. It just doesn't happen. So I get up in the morning, have my coffee, exercise, before my kids get up, so that when they're up, we're sort of hitting the ground running together. We have some systems like, my wife and I, we highly prioritize time for just the 2 of us, as well as solo time. So about once a quarter, each of us will do a night away by ourselves. We'll book a hotel room here in town and just go away for a night where you get to just go out to dinner by yourself and read a book, watch a movie, wake up whenever you want without the 4-year-old climbing in bed. And it's just amazing what that time does to really recharge. We try to get away. We say 2 1-week periods a year and try to do a weekend every couple of months. And I'm saying this from a position of privilege where, we've been able to build the business to allow to financially support this. When I was first starting my business, I did none of what I'm talking about because I didn't have any money. And so you get creative, you figure other things out. But just really putting things on the calendar for me is what is so helpful, and creating that structure for myself. Because if I don't put my keys in the same place when I come home, they're lost. I will never find my keys again, but I have a place to put them. And my wife is super helpful in helping me create some of these systems that I know where my keys go. I know where my wallet goes, so I never lose them. And just acknowledging that about myself and trying to live within those parameters, but then also don't beat yourself up when you can't find your keys. I'm also easily frustrated when I know I should have just put them back up on the board and I didn't. But give yourself some grace because you're going to make mistakes.
So good. I appreciate you pulling back the curtain even more and telling us this is super helpful. I think a lot of advisors and business owners love to hear these kinds of things. Like, what are you actually doing? Right. And go ahead.
I'll add one thing to that. And I was homeschooled my whole life. And so we were never tested for ADHD. That just not something that you did. And what I saw was that my son was exhibiting signs of being ADHD. So I went and got tested so I could start learning some tools, because I've created coping mechanisms that I probably couldn't even acknowledge. I didn't acknowledge that that's what they were for. But that's also something that is, it needs to be acknowledged, is that, mental health challenges and neurodivergence is hereditary. And so many of us are much more likely to have kids who also have similar challenges that we do. It's a gift and a curse at times, and your greatest strength's your greatest weakness, which is what I think my ADHD is. But just getting that toolkit, because being a parent, it does add an extra layer of challenge as well when you're dealing with this for yourself, as well as helping your kids learn those coping mechanisms and that sort of thing. So just want to add that that's the other component to this too, is that it does, it's what keeps life fun, but it's the challenge.
Yeah, 100%. And I talk a lot about systems. You brought this up, several times. You need to have systems for both business and personal, to keep those boundaries, right? To keep your balance whatever that looks like in your life. So I really appreciate you mentioning this. On the other side, the other question I had from the previous comments that you had was about advisors. Back to advisors who are struggling, and business owners, quite honestly, business owners who are struggling to really grow because they're not marketers, right? Mm-hmm. I remember when I first became an advisor, the thing was find a niche and try to, go to their meetings and do a lot of the hobnobbing and get referrals. And that's all fine and dandy. But what I have found to be the best forward moving vehicle to help you get into that niche, quite honestly, books, podcasting, white papers, content. Mm-hmm. You partnered with Michael Kitces as co-founders of XYPN together, a large part because of his reach, his content that get out to 60,000 financial advisors every week with his newsletters and things. So let's talk a little bit about what you suggest for advisors who are trying to grow with organic content.
Yeah, it's the old proverb, to go fast, go alone, to go far, go together. And it's one of the things I did not mention earlier, was just like how I stay on track. And one of the things I did was partnered with Michael to help me stay on track. And so we joke that I'm the director of speeding things up and he's the director of slowing things down. And he's really my filter. I have a million ideas. And he helps filter down because his natural inclination is to move very slowly. My natural inclination is to sprint. And so we end up meeting in the middle. I probably push him a little faster than he's comfortable, and he slows me down to the point that sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to go on vacation because I need something. You won't let me do anything I want to do. And so that to me is one of the huge components when it comes to marketing, because I'm not a natural marketer. I'm a sales guy. And so give me someone to talk to about XY Planning Network. I'll sell them on the vision. Have me, write content and post videos and stuff. It's just not my skill set. It's much more Michael's skill set. And he's been able to help sort of build up the team to do that. And so one of the things you have to recognize is what medium you're comfortable in. I would never ask an advisor to do content or do a marketing medium that they're not comfortable with. So for instance, I'm much better at audio than writing. I'm not a very good writer. And so if you said, hey, Alan, the only way you're ever going to grow your business is to blog, I'm never going to grow my business because I'm just not a good enough writer. I much prefer audio. And so that's why we started XYPN radio. It's why I love coming on shows like this. Like, I just love the conversation. It's where I'm more comfortable. Other people love video. Other people love social media and more snippet style content. What I believe, however, is that content marketing, at least with our current, with where technology is today, marketing in a way that lives on, that lives forever, that allows you to sort of build that long tail of growth is so important. And so, but I also think there's other ways to grow. If you just absolutely hate content marketing, you're not going to partner with someone who does content marketing. You can build a business in other ways. I just think content is probably the best way, the most scalable way. But if you want to take a different route, there's options there as well.
So good. And I 100% agree. I think content marketing has really been, the reason why I'm doing this podcast, this reach, the show, the book, I have another book coming out. Like it's content that grows. Now, I'm not the greatest writer, and I would follow up to you and say, hey, if you want to write a book, you don't have to actually write it anymore. Like, you could transcribe it. Mm-hmm. And like somebody like you would just do a killer job of having an outline and talking it through your podcast, and then taking that, sending it to someone that does great transcription work. We've got a lot of AI at this point that can do it, and then an editor that developmentally edits it, puts it together. And quite honestly, I teach this to my clients who know that books are still as old as they are. The number one, the greatest. Podcasts are pretty darn close. So most people are listening to podcasts. So if you're going to do your book, I also highly recommend make sure you do your audiobook. And I like to always say, put it in your voice. There's a lot of great books out there. I just listened to Good to Great again. I believe that one is in the author's voice. But there's some who don't, talk it through, and I miss that connection. So if I knew, for example, that you were writing a book, Alan, I would love to hear it in your voice because you're good at audio and I connect with that. So I appreciate it. But anyway, I think the idea here, as you mentioned, is pick something and start with that. Mm-hmm. Start with what you're good at. And it's a strengths-based model. So I love it. What advice would you give to others as we're wrapping up this show here today? Business owners, financial advisors, real estate agents, like others in surrounding, related industries, who are running their own business to keep balance while they're growing their business.
You really got to surround yourself with the right people who are going to support you on the journey that you want to be on. If you are someone who really wants balance and surround yourself, and your 4 best friends or your study group are all hustle culture types that are just telling you to go grind it out and get up at 3:00 in the morning, you're gonna go a different direction than you want to do. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that's their style. It's not mine. And so, what I will say is that your partner in life, whether you're married or in a long-term relationship, your partner will make or break you as an entrepreneur. I don't think we talk enough about how important it is to select a partner when you are making long-term, lifelong decisions around partnerships, that you have a partner who will support you in the journey that you want to be on. Because if your partner does not want you to be an entrepreneur, you will fail or the relationship will fail, guaranteed. Just one of those things are going to fail. And so, you got to surround yourself with the right people. You need to be in a relationship that supports you on the path and the journey that you want to be on. I'm a big fan of having a study group of other advisors or other entrepreneurs that are going through similar challenges, that to be that support system, and have a therapist. And, we only think of therapists when we have a problem. And talk to any therapist, and they will tell you, like, please come to me before things are broken. Let me teach you the tools to avoid things getting broken. It's a lot easier. And we tend to only show up to the therapist's office when we're ready to get divorced, or we're in the middle of chaos. And so have a therapist, and you don't have to meet every week. If that's, maybe it's every other week. I think I do basically every 2 weeks with my therapist. And it's a wide range of topics, and you just never really know what's going to come out of that. It doesn't all have to be about your childhood, because I know that's what people think of with therapy. There is going to be some of that. I like to joke that parenting is just knowing your kids are going to end up talking about you in therapy one day, because we all do. However, there's so much more benefit than just that, and just helping sort of build that tool set, build those muscles, so that when you do face challenges, that you're prepared for them and you can weather that storm. So my advice is really be very intentional with who you surround yourself with, because that support system is ultimately what's going to support your success or support your failure.
Wonderful advice. Couldn't agree more. The end of my book of Achieving Balance, my first book here, talk all about couples and how we need to support each other in the balance act, right? Because if you go to work and you come back home and you're not supported either way, there's going to be overflow of stress that comes through the family to the work, and from the work to the home. In addition to that, I've heard a quote recently. Russell Brunson talks about this all the time. You can only be as successful as your spouse is supportive. Yes, absolutely. And you kind of really mentioned this. It's who you have around you to support you and build you up. 100% agree with this. I'm very blessed to have a very supportive spouse. I know you do as well. So you can really talk the talk and walk the walk and be the supportive spouse, right? I know you are. We've talked about this in times past. So thank you for your time, Alan. Thanks for being here. If people want to go and check out XY Planning, I'll put the links in the show notes, but I've got xyplanningnetwork.com. Check them out. I've enjoyed my interactions with you guys. And thanks again, Alan, for your advice here on the Balanced Growth Show. Everybody, if you love this, like, share, support, send this to someone who needs the advice from Alan today, and hope this has been an excellent use of your time. And again, remember, live life on purpose.